the sheet if2. Now this is a review of what we did earlier in the book. But this time we will use the if function and consider cell references. Now, the bonus, whether or not you get a bonus, is a great place to start when you're learning the if function. Now, here is Rod. He had 20,382. We have to compare this to the bonus hurdle. If this sales amount is greater than or equal to this, then we're going to get the bonus. Otherwise, we're not going to get the bonus. Now notice we've talked a lot about that particular construction. That's a logical formula, which we've done. Or when we're talking about the if function, the argument is named logical test. But logical formula and logical test, same thing. They're expressions that come out either true or false. They can only do one of two things. So let's remind ourselves how to do this. In this column, we're going to do a logical formula. I'm going to say, hey, are the sales, one cell to my left, greater than or equal to the bonus hurdle? And I'm going to lock this. Since I'm copying it down across the numbers, that means the 9 needs the dollar sign. Locked the row reference. Now, this is a logical formula, but exactly this part, and I'm going to copy it when I come over and start doing my if function, the logical formula, it's going to be called a logical test. Control Enter. Double click and send it down. All right, so there's a false, there's a false, the rest are true. Now let's do our if function. And why do we have the if function? To put one of two things in the cell. This cell either gets yes or no. Notice over here it either got true or false, but here we want something besides true and false. So the if function is perfect for that. Equals if. It just wants a logical test. That's some expression that comes out true or false. Control V. And as what we looked at earlier in the book, the if function, the hardest part is that logical test. The rest of it is just as easy as pie. Comma, what do you want in the cell if it's true? Now I want the word yes. And since the word yes is never going to change, we know by now in this book, text in formulas go in double quotes. So there's that, comma, the value of false in quotes, no. Close parentheses. Control Enter, double click and send it down. So the falses match up perfectly with the no's. Finally, we can go ahead and put one of two, anything we want. Here we put text strings. These are called text strings or text or word. Here we want numbers, so I'm going to say equals if. And I still have that thing copied in memory, so I'm going to Control V. There's our logical test, comma, the value if true, well, boom, 750. F4, 1, 2 times, because again, same as this cell reference, this one needs to be locked when I go down across the numbers. All right, so we have that row reference 10 locked, comma, the value of false. Well, since 0 is never going to change, I'm going to put it, hard code that number right into the formula for value of false. Close parentheses, Control Enter, double click and send it down. Now let's go ahead and when we create an if function and we are in charge of the spreadsheet, we better check and verify that our formula is working correctly. Now, how many things do we have to check? All right, so is this there? Well, OK. I'm fumbling here. I'm sorry. We got to check this. We're the author here, so we're going to check 3 things. We're going to check, is this above the hurdle? It is. Is it right on the hurdle? It is, and our formula is working correctly. And is it below the hurdle? Now, it doesn't matter what you check. I'm just going to put any number below. All right? So we actually check this. 3 things. Above, below, exactly right on, and below. In all 3 cases, our formula is giving us the right result. So I'm going to assume the formula is correct. Now, let's go ahead and try it here. I'm going to change this to 21,000. Right? The boss is all of a sudden much kinder. She says, OK, we're going to raise it by 1,000. And, but we're only going to give you 500. Maybe that's not any nicer. All right, so now we have 3 no's and 2 yeses. Wow, and the total bonus compensation went down. So from the firms, the stockholders like that, but maybe the employees don't. All right, don't forget when you do an if, test all 3 things. Let's go to our next sheet, the if 3. we're going to check if two things are in balance. We did this one earlier in the book also. But here we're going to explicitly use an if and put two text strings in the cell. We want either this is in balance or this is not in balance. So I'm going to say equals if. Logical test, well, I'm checking that equals this. The second time we use that equal sign, it is a comparative operator. Here it is telling Excel I'm a formula. There's our logical test, comma, value if true. And you could type whatever you want, not in balance. I think when we did this formula earlier in the book, I misspelled, and we talked about if you misspell, or if you want to do spell check, you better do it while you're in edit mode. So I'm going to hit F7. It's guessing wrong there. It's trying to fix the fact that there's no space there. Forget that. Ignore. And then finally, it did catch my balance. I'm going to double click that. Click OK. Oh, they're in balance, right? But if someone had accidentally typed an well, I thought I was going to get out of balance. OK, well, I'll just type something like this. Oh, so I've tested, and it's not working. We better check this out. Oh, look at that. I did it backwards. So I'm going to Control Z, Z. So there was already something not in balance here, but my formula is not working. Oh, I'm glad I checked it. So I'm going to reverse these. I put the value of true should have been what? In balance. So I'm going to Control X, get rid of the comma. Now, in balance is value of true. I'm going to come to the end and comma, Control V. It always pays to check. I wasn't even intending to do that, but mistakes are always good, because if you're paying attention, you learn from them. All right, I got my fingers crossed. Not in balance. What are you talking about? I see 836 and 836 here. But of course, we're not tricked. We are never going to be tricked by formatting. I'm immediately going to investigate, and there it is. Now, we don't know whether or not what's wrong here. The accountant investigating the account would. Well, wait a second. Let's see. If I get rid of this one, notice, oh, well, OK, and then I'm going to get rid of this one right here. I'm going to hit the delete key. All right, so now we're in balance. All right, let's go look at another great example. Now, we're on the sheet if4. Here we have a list, a sale, and a product. And here is the product 1, product 2, product 6, whatever the names are. And we want to know for this transactional data set, is this an in or out house? Is this product something that comes from our stockyard, or is it from out of our stockyard? Logical test, is this equal to product 5? Is this equal to product 6? But we only want one true. Anytime you have that situation where there's two or more logical tests and you need only one true to put the thing in the cell, you can use the OR function. So let's try the OR function. OR, logical test, logical test. I'm going to say, is that equal to this? And then I'm going to hit the F4 key. That's logical test number 1. Comma, and then I'm going to say, is this equal to this? And I'm going to lock this one, F4. Actually, I'm going to F4 twice to lock the row reference, and here also, because in both cases we're copying it down across the rows. Let's just see if this works. Control Enter. Double click and say, now we're just doing a true false. Well, right there we can see that's what the OR does. You can put as many logical tests as you want, up to I think like 255. And as long as OR gets one true, OR will deliver a true to the cell or a false in our case. So double click and send it down. Ooh, there. Oh, right. Right. But now we want the word in or out. So I'm going to, with this range still highlighted and the active cell at the top, I'm going to hit F2. Because we know we can edit formulas when all of them are highlighted. We can edit the active cell, and when we get it right, Control Enter, and it repopulates them. A convenient trick that actually saves a bunch of clicks, because usually you come back up here, you edit it, you enter it, and then you double click. But forget it. Just edit mode, and let's change this. Well, wait a second. I thought the if was for putting one of two things in a cell. Is that our situation here? Yeah, in or out. Guess what? The or function can be used. I'm going to type if tab. It can be used right in the logical test. Because remember, the logical test, no matter how simple or complicated that this may be, all the simple or complicated thing needs to deliver is true or false. And that's exactly what or does. All right, at this point, the formula is hanging way out over here, so it's probably safer to come up here and click and then edit it up here. But I'm going to be risky just for the sake of the video and come here. I'm going to type a comma, and now it says value if true. Oh, value if true, that means out. In double quotes, comma, and then value if false, in. Now again, these words aren't going to change, so we're just going to hard code them in. Control Enter. And there we have it, in or out. That is F2. Or function being used inside the if function. Technically, this is called nesting functions, just because anytime you have more than one function in well, anytime you have a function inside another function, it's called nesting. All right, next we want to look at and. We'll click on the sheet if 5. All right, we have a great example here. Here's our data set. This is our customer data set. And we're in the accounts receivable department, and we do customer credit analysis. Boy, is Excel going to make this easy for us. So we have our customer information, net worth, yearly sales, and credit score. And we want to ask the question, we have a number of tests. Do they pass the hurdle? And if so, do we extend credit or not extend credit? Here's our hurdles. We can say, and credit departments have all sorts of different ways of analyzing customers and deciding whether to extend credit or not. In our situation, we have 3 rules, and all 3 have to be true. So they have to have greater than 100K net worth, greater than 500,000 average yearly sales, and a credit score of greater than 3. Now we're going to look at 2 examples. This one's in the book, and then I'll look at a slightly different one over here. But these are all 3 must be met. Well, we have what? 3 logical tests. And instead of the or function, we're going to use the and. And why? We talked about this earlier, just a couple video ago. And criteria means 2 or more logical tests, and all of them have to come out true in order for the and to deliver a true to the cell. So logical test number 1, we're going to say the net worth for the customer, 3 cells to the left, is that greater than or equal to? And by the way, last video I did greater than or equal to, and here also, that's always determined by contract, whether the employee contract in our last example or how the contract's written here. But I'm going to use equal to. So if you get right on, it's OK. All right, there, and I'm copying it down across the row. So I'm going to hit F4 2 times, comma, logical test number 2. Oh, the sales greater than or equal to 500K, and I'm going to lock it going down across the rows, and comma. Oh, wait a second. I just said I was going to use the equal, but here, forget it. You got to have greater than 3. So if it's exactly 3, it doesn't count. So I'm going to say that. Whoops, sorry, made the mistake. That customer number, because that's the relative cell reference as we copy down, is that greater than this. Now, I can't remember how I did it in the book. I think I did it, oh, yeah, I did it that way, greater than 3. But again, that's determined by whatever the contract says. Now, this B13, see, it's looking down here. When we copy it down, we want it locked. So I'm going to hit F4 2, lock the row reference. So it's locked on 13 as we copy down across the numbers, the rows. Close parentheses. Control Enter. Double click and send it down. OK, so it looks like, OK, this person right here fails on this test. This person right here fails on this one, oh, but not this one. And also, let's see, this customer fails here. So average yearly sales are way below. All right, so all you need is one. Let's just test this. What if we put average yearly sales of 500,000? So I'm testing it, right? True. So true, true, true. Control Z. All right, now, what do we really want? I want the words extend credit or not extend credit. I'm actually going to cheat here. I'm going to copy this in edit mode. We've seen this a few times in this book and in the videos. When you have if I were to copy this over, all the cell references would change, and I don't want to. I want to use the exact same thing without moving them, so I'm just going to copy it in edit mode. That means when I paste it, the B3 will still be B3. So I come here, type equals. And I'm going to put the AND function inside the if, just as we saw with the OR a moment ago. All that logical test needs is something that equates to true or false. Control V. There's the B3, just like we said. Copied it in edit mode. That B3 doesn't change. All right, there's a logical test, comma, and I'm going to value if true. I'm a terrible speller, so I have to be really careful. Extend credit, copy, and hopefully I'll do it right this time. Last time I did it a couple examples ago, I did it wrong. Value if false, that's the don't extend credit. So I'm going to Control V and put the word don't, or whatever you want to put within those quotes. That can be the fun part for you. All right, let's see if this works. I got my fingers crossed. Notice 3 logical tests. They all have to come out to be true. Double click and send it down. All right, so we got it. True, true, true. So there we go. And usually in a column like this in accounts receivable, when you're using Excel, you probably want some words like this instead of true or false. All right, now those were all ands, but now we're going to take it one step further. I'm going to copy and paste it right here. I don't know if it'll fit just right. Let's see. I'm going to click up here on the top and double click between any row header, and it should fit all of them. All right, now what I'd like to do over in this column, and maybe I'm going to scoot over one, is I want a slightly different, and I might even put a note here. All tests equal true. So 1, 2, 3, they all had to equal true. What I'd like to do here is show you how to mix the AND function and the OR function. So here's a slightly different situation. We are going to ask the question, if the customer exceeds both of these, but not necessarily these. So we're going to look at these. Boom. If they meet both of these, which will be an AND, true, true, then we'll give them credit. Or we're not going to care at all about these. We're just going to look here. And if they're 5 or greater than 4, we will accept them. So see, that's an OR. But wait a second. I thought we just said this was an AND. But this part, this is one logical test. We can use an AND. Are they greater than the hurdles? That AND function can do 2 logical tests and deliver a true or false. And then we're going to go, well, there's another test, and it's an OR. Or if they don't meet that, just look here, and if it's greater than 4. So watch this. And we're going to start with the OR function. So can an OR have 2 logical tests? Yes. But our first logical test involves testing 2 things, and they both have to be true. So inside here, I'm going to put the AND. And I'm going to say, is that greater than or equal to this hurdle? Oops, I hit instead of F4, and I'm going to hit F3. So that's inside of the AND, comma, that's the first one, comma, and then this is the second one, greater than or equal to this. And I'm going to lock it going down. Okay, so now one thing that's very polite when you're starting to do longer and longer formulas with lots of functions inside of functions, this screen tip shifted to AND. But as soon as I close this off, it'll go back to OR. So now we're making sure it's logical to we're done. I'm going to close parentheses and watch what happens to the screen tip. Immediately it goes back. And it reminds us in a complicated formula like this, oh yeah, the AND was just sitting inside of the logical one. So now I type a comma, And now the second logical test in the OR is simply, is that one greater than, and actually let's just say the contract said greater than or equal to 4. Now wait a second, I just made a mistake there. I didn't put a 4 there. No problem. I can finish my formula, enter it, and then come back and change this. That's the beauty of Excel, right? So I'm going to still lock this going down F4. All right, so there it is. Did my second logical test for OR, close parentheses, Control Enter. I'm going to immediately come down here and hit 4. OK. Now I'm going to double click and send this down. Ooh, now they're all true. Well, let's do a little fix in here. Let's say this, let's see. OK, this person did not pass, but they passed on this one. So when we asked the question, are both of these, do these exceed these? We got a false there, so that and delivered a false, but it got a true here. So now when I change this to 3, or let's change it to 2, right? Now we get a false. Let's go ahead and on this complicated OR and, let's run Formula Evaluator. I'm going to go to Formulas, Formula Evaluating, Evaluate Formula, or TUF, Alt-T-U-F. There's actually a shorter keyboard shortcut. Alt, and then it's M, and then V. Now I memorized, so Alt MV will do it, but I remembered tough, and it was just such a tough as a slang word, tough, cool feature that I just remembered that. So Alt tough, but MV is faster, so you probably want to do that one. All right, so let's look at this here. I'm going to click Enter. The AND is looking at the 125,000. It's comparing it to the 100,000. That's a true. Now it's going to compare 95,000 to 500. No way, that's a false. So now the AND is going to deliver a false to the OR. Now it's going to do the second test. Is the 2 greater than or equal to 4? Well, that's false too. So in this case, we get 2 falses, and the OR is going to say false. Now escape. Let's change this back to 5. And now I'm going to click right here, Alt Tough. I'm going to look at it go. All right, the first test for the AND is met. The second test is not. So because there's not 2 trues, AND delivers a false. And then the second test was the 5's greater than or equal to 4. So we see a true, and the OR says, oh, OK. So this is a case where the credit department decided, hey, we're going to have 2 separate tests, and we don't care which one is passed. Whichever one passes, we will accept them as a credit customer. All right, so that's a lot about AND. Now we got to go. OK, so far we've done one of 2 things into a cell. We did one of 2 things into a cell, and our logical test used an AND. Back over here on if4, one of 2 things in a cell, but we use the OR as our logical test. Now we want to see over on sheet 6. It's still one of 2 things. They either, we're going to look at customers and their sales. If they pass the hurdle, they're getting a commission of 3%. Otherwise, they're getting 0. So it's still going to be one of 2 things, but not into the cell. We're going to need to put it into a formula. All right? So let's just do the if part first and see if we can get one of 2 things into this column. So equals if, and what's our logical test? Are the sales, relative cell reference, greater than or equal to this hurdle? And I'm going to lock it with the F4 key going down across the rows. Anytime that is true, comma, they get the commission rate in the cell. And I'm going to hit F4 twice to lock it going down. Otherwise, 0. All right, one of 2 things into a cell. That's not what we want, though. So I'm going to double click, send it down. But wait a second. I can clearly see that's greater than or equal to 7,000. Why is it showing 0? We are getting tricked by number formatting. In essence, I can't remember if I pre-formatted this, but even if I didn't, when I made a formula based on a cell reference here, it sucked the formatting there. So what do? Back to General. And the keyboard shortcut is Control-Shift tilde or grave accent. It's the key to the left of the number 1, Control-Shift. And there we see our dollars, our currency with 0 decimals showing, of course, would round 3 pennies to $0. But there we have our numbers. And now I'm immediately going to put it into edit mode. This is not what we want. But notice, it's delivering what we want. F2, well, what do we want? Anytime we get a 0 or a 0.03, we simply multiply it by the sales. That sales number times the commission rate, whether this or 0, will give us our actual commission. Now, relative cell reference, and by the way, I'm cell reference there, so it's going to resuck the format. And so this whole column, when I enter it, will have the currency format. To populate this formula into the column, Control and Enter. All right, so what do we do here? One of two things into a formula, not just the cell. Finally, we want to look at the if, and we want to look at what happens when you have more than two things. Now, is it OK to put one of three things in the cell? You betcha. Now, we already talked a little bit about categories when we were talking about between criteria. Now, notice I set this up for the first commission rate is going to be 0, and then 0.02, and then 0.03, right? But anywhere between 0, the sales here are greater than or equal to 0, but less than 5,000, no commission rate. Here, the sales are in the middle. It's greater than or equal to 5,000, but less than 7,000. And finally, our last category is just everything greater than or equal to. Now, notice we set these categories up carefully. We talked about this before. The equal sign is always going to be on the lower end. When we get to the last category, it's different because then we need to just have an open-ended category. But notice the 7,000 is not included here, but is here. 5,000 not included in this category. 5,000 is included here. So this kind of construction of categories is important so that we don't double count or have a formula mistake. The other thing about multiple ifs is if you have this situation, you either need to start at the bottom and go this way, or start at the top and go this way, or start at the bottom and go this way. That way you avoid doing a lot of extra and function constructions. So let's see how this works. Equals if, I'm just going to start off, hey, are these sales greater than or equal to, and again, you start either here or here. I'm going to start here. And I'm going to hit F4 to lock it going down across the rows. Okay, that's the logical test. Comma. The value of true, oh, well, it's 0.03. And I'm going to lock this going down also with my F4 key. All right, so we have our value of true. Comma. Now, here's the rule of thumb for nesting ifs, or anytime you have more than two items. When you build your formula and you get to the value if false, if there is more than one item left, you have to put an if here. So we still have two items left, so we don't know which one, so we have to put an if. I did ig. All right, now what's the logical test? Well, you would think that we'd have to do an and say, OK, now if the sales right here are less than or equal to 5,000, sorry, greater than or equal to 5,000, but less than 7,000, you would think that that's what you'd have to do because that's the explicit category here. But guess what? The fact that we're in the false means this test was already run. We already asked the question, is it greater than or equal to 7,000? If that's true, then it already put this into the cell and the formula stops. The fact that we're here means we've already eliminated this possibility. So this possibility here has already been eliminated. So all that's left is to say, is this greater than or equal to this? And we have to lock this one going down F4. All right? So because we've already eliminated here, that's all we have to put here. And notice that will work as long as you start at one end and go methodically through the whole categories, either from the bottom up or the top down. All right, so now logical test, comma, and then what goes in the cell? Boom. And I'm going to lock it with the F4 key. Now, comma, we get to our value of false. How many items are left? Just one. So that's the rule. We always ask if there's more than one, we have to keep building ifs. But as soon as you get to the last one and you've methodically gone from one end to the other, all you have to do is boop. And that's the commission rate locked going down. Close parentheses. Oh, now wait a second. Here's the rule of thumb for this. This is only two ifs. I mean, sometimes you have 3 or 4, 5 or 6, up to 64, I think it is now. I read a post once at the Mr. Excel message board that says, why would you ever want to do 64? OK, so if you have more than one, you just watch and you're closing off. You don't need to put a lot of junk here. You just need to put parentheses. So you just watch, close parentheses, close parentheses. And as soon as you see the black one, you know, OK, I can stop. Control Enter. Same thing, Control Shift tilde to get rid of that number formatting. Double click and send it down. OK, so there we can see it's working fine. This is between. This one's below, or in that category, right? So it's working fine. Now I'm going to hit F2. Notice all the cells are highlighted. Active cell right there, F2, and simply go times that right there. So what are we doing? We're putting one of three things into a formula. In essence, what are we doing? If we highlight this right here and hit the F9 key, this whole thing only does one thing. It puts one of three things into the formula. So I hit F9. There it is. It's putting 0.02 into the formula. I'm going to Control Z on that. Now I'm going to populate this with Control Enter. And there again, it sucked the format. And we can come down here and check our cell references. In essence, what we're doing. These are all locked. That one's looking fine. Now, one thing, I'm going to Control Z. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to test it. I'm going to type a 0. And here, we can't just check three things. I'm going to check a 0, a exactly 5,000, working, 5,001, still working, 7,000, and then above 7,000. Those are the things you need to check. So as I methodically go through the categories, I'm checking. All right, I'm going to Control Z, 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 and leave it like that. And then maybe even Z. No. All right, I will just go like this. Double click and send it down. All right, so that's two ifs because we put three things. And the rule of thumb will always be if you have 5 things, you need 4 ifs. If you have 7 things, you need 6 ifs. It's always one less if than things going into the cell. Now, this is 2 ifs and 3 things. Let's just go down here. I made a horrible formula here. Oh, God, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, this is going to be torture. Oh, and there it is. But again, if you would never do this kind of formula like this, because in our next video, we'll see how to substitute in for this. We can use the VLOOKUP. Because in this situation, our categories are mutually exclusive, and we set them all up correctly in their descending order, which we'll talk about in the next video. Some situations, though, you don't have nicely organized formula inputs, and so you really do need to string together an if like this. But notice, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things, 5 ifs. All right, in our next video, we will start exactly here and see how to take a formula like this and set up our table and use a single function called VLOOKUP in place of the if.